In St. Louis's rough edges, a kid's homemade Gene car toy ignited a cop calling, escaping violent home horrors by idolizing a grandfather's shield, vowing to guard the weak. From savior drives born in beatings to retirement's isolating peace, Sergeant Adam Kavanaugh unmasked the badge's cerebral toll. St. Louis Sergeant Adam Kavanaugh, dreams to demons exposed and unyielding truths. This is his story. Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Sure. My name's Adam Kavanaugh. I'm a retired sergeant from the St. Louis County Police Department in Missouri.
Okay. Adam, so like the last couple of days, I've been sitting around and listening to your stories and stuff like that. You seem like a very cerebral kind of guy. You don't seem like, the jock football player that became a cop. How did you end up in law enforcement?
I know it sounds kind of cliche, but literally ever since I've been a little kid, I've always wanted to be a policeman. That's what it was. I always wanted to be a policeman. Matter of fact, I even still have it to this day. My mom made this little police car out of old blue jeans, right? We grew up in a very poor area. We were very poor when I was growing up. And I have that she sewed because we didn't have toys, right? She just made things. So my first thing she ever made me was this police car. That's just something I've always wanted to be.
Where did you think that came from? Did you have any relatives that were into law enforcement?
Yeah, my dad was for a short period of time was a police officer. And we're talking a long time ago. So there was like private policemen that also worked in certain neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. He did that, and then not that I ever got to meet him, but my grandfather was a St. Louis City policeman for many years.
But you never met him. Did you think that had some influence on you?
Yeah, my childhood was very rough. So my dad didn't talk good about a lot of people, right? He was kind of paranoid kind of person. But the only person I ever heard good stories about was always about his father, his stepfather. It was actually his stepfather. Mm. So I always heard the stories. Never got to meet him, but I always got to hear the good stories of how he rescued them from, they were in orphanages as kids, and just that kind of story. So I don't know, maybe that sank in with me over time. But yeah, so it's kind of where it was at.
When you say your childhood was rough, what was that all about?
So it's like a lot of different phases, 'cause I got a pretty big family. But my father was a very violent person. Not a drinker, never had alcohol in the house, wasn't that, but the way he acted was like he was a drunk all the time. Very violent, beating us, beating my mom, those types of things is what my life was growing up.
So it's interesting because I've interviewed a couple people with that type of background, and they all become law enforcement. Do you think I don't want to say a savior complex, but do you think that kind of protecting the weaker guy came from that kind of background?
I really don't know. Because back then domestic violence was not what domestic violence is today. Mm-hmm. Police never showed up. I mean, I don't think I don't ever recall, not that it never happened, but I don't ever recall the police being called to our house for anything.
Okay.
Even though neighbors knew what things were going on, how things were in the house. Like I said, we grew up very, very poor, always on welfare, food stamps, all those kind of things growing up. And maybe that's part of it. As I was growing up, I said, that's not going to be, I'm never going to beat women. I'm never going to be on food stamps. I'm never going to be on welfare. Not that it's bad if somebody needs to rely on that. We needed to rely on it. My dad didn't work. My mom didn't work. My dad had some disabilities because his biological father, when he was a kid, threw him out of a second-story building. So it messed up his feet and legs, and so he was pretty messed up. But so I don't know. It's things that I swore not to be. So it pushed me towards what I wanted to be, and I think that's probably where it came from.
Okay. So your goal is to ultimately, from a little kid, you want to be law enforcement. Why do you go into the military then?
So made mistakes, right? So as a young kid, I quit high school when I was 16 and allowed to quit. And by then my mom had passed away. My mom died when I was 15. And my dad didn't care what I did. So I started kind of hanging out with the wrong groups, the wrong crowds, getting into some trouble, nothing major, nothing with the police. Started drinking, having those issues, a little bit with drugs. But I knew I wanted to be a policeman, still in my head. And I dropped out of high school, So I'm thinking I'm never going to get to be a policeman. I dropped out of high school, but I knew that a lot of the police departments, if you had military service, that would count for your college of getting in to. So even in the mess, my head knew where it wanted to be. So I thought I got to get out of this neighborhood before I end up in jail like the rest of the people that I hung out with. And I got my girlfriend pregnant, so I was like, I got to support the family, right? That was in my head. I didn't want to be like my dad, right? So I was going to support the family. So I said, what am I going to do? I'm 17, getting ready to turn 18. I said, well, I'll join the Army. So joined the Army and got away from it all, which actually, that's, a lot of people always say, do you regret having kids so young, right? So I'm 59, my oldest daughter's 40, and I said no, because that forced me, I had it so ingrained in my head that I was not going to not provide for my family, that I had to do something. It forced me into the only really choice I felt I had, which was joining the military, which got me out of St. Louis, which got me away from all those people. And then that gave me the discipline I needed before I came back.
Okay, so, man, it seems like a real dichotomy based on conversations that I've been listening to you then talk about. Like I said, you seem like a real cerebral guy. So tell me about growing up. Were you a studious kid? I mean, what kind of kid were you?
No. Just I was, and a lot of it has to do with the way we're brought up. Is I try to be as quiet and in the background and away from things as humanly possible.
Okay.
Didn't want to be noticed. Didn't want anything going on, which is funny because it's the opposite of what it took me a long time. These kind of things, I'd have never done this even probably 20 years ago. I just didn't want to be out front. What forced me to do it was different organizations, because I did, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it with the trafficking and the child exploitation stuff. These organizations kept wanting me to come talk, and I didn't want to do it. But then finally they said, you have to do it. We don't want one, because I'd send one of my guys, right, to do it for me.
Yeah.
And then just slowly but surely I got to where now it doesn't bother me at all anymore. But I was that kid that you'd have never known I was in a room if I was there.
Okay. So you serve in the Army.
Yep.
And then you get out and you go to your initial PD experience is you start with St. Louis City, 92-ish. So I think we talked about this before, because you start with St. Louis City, but you end up with St. Louis County PD. Yep. When you start with St. Louis City PD, I'm sorry to make you do math, in 92, how old are you?
92. I would have been 27, 26. Now, when I first came out of the military, bounced from a few jobs here and there, was still married to my first wife, bounced around a little bit, job to job, and then what I wound up doing was getting a job as a civilian employee of the police department. Because in the city, it's all about politics. You're not going to put in an application and get hired. Dependent on, there's certain criteria you can, but for me, if you don't know somebody, you're not going to get hired. It's all politics. So I knew I wanted to be a policeman, so I'm like, well, I'll just do this job. So I worked in what they called prisoner processing. So all the policemen bringing in the prisoners, we would process them into the jail.
Right.
And I did that for a few years, made the right connections. I'm an alcoholic, so I had a drinking problem. So got that all straightened out, quit drinking. My boss at the time was like, hey, you've done good, you're clean, everything's good. I wouldn't help you before, but I'll help you now. And then that's how I got hired onto the police department.
Wow, so did he know that you were an alcoholic before and had a drinking problem, and that's why he didn't want to help you out? She, sorry.
Yes,
okay.
no. Yes, she knew me. We knew each other well, right? We worked around each other a lot.
Okay.
And then I quit drinking. I haven't drank in 35 years now.
So I'm assuming that the alcoholism have nothing to do with being a police officer.
No, because it was prior
Yeah.
to me being a policeman. Because she was, which I found out later was, I was never going to help you while you were drinking, because you'd have just got fired anyway. So,
Yeah. So do you think working in the jail, is it fair to say you started in the jail?
Started in the jail.
Okay.
Yep.
So did that help you later on when you started working as a police officer?
Just having knowledge of, it made it easier because I understood the laws, I understood report writing, all those things. Because I was also, before I got hired, became a reserve police officer also for the police department. So got to ride in the car, got to help write reports, run people, all that stuff that you do. You do the same thing policemen did. You we just weren't getting paid for it
Yeah.
as a reserve officer. So I did that a little bit too. So yeah, those things helped me get ready for what I ultimately was going to do.
Okay, so why do you go? Why do you leave St. Louis City and go to the county?
So my wife, my second wife, so I had gotten a divorce, with all that, with the first wife, my kids and them, because I had such a bad drinking problem, left and went to the East Coast. So they were up in Vermont, left to go to Vermont. Back then I didn't care. I was like, well, okay, fine, I got more time to be by myself, because I was an alcoholic.
Sure.
So, I met my soon-to-be second wife there. She's a police officer. She's also retired. She got injured in the line of duty, so she had to retire early. But she had gotten injured, so she was going to retire on that injury. And I was like, I had to make a decision, because if you stay too long, you got to stay in that pension system. It's not worth getting out at a certain point. And it was time in the city of St. Louis at that time. If you worked in the city of St. Louis, you had to live in the city of St. Louis. So that meant I started, me and my wife had kids. They were starting to get a little bit older, getting near that school age. And it's like, you have two choices. Send them to private school or send them to St. Louis City Public Schools. St. Louis City Public School was never going to happen. And the private schools knew they kind of had you, right? So those were very expensive. So I made the best decision for my family. My wife was already retiring. I had a long way to go yet. I think I still had, I had a minimum of like 15 more years, 14 more years before I could retire anyway. So I was like, I'm not really losing much. Mm-hmm. And then went out to St. Louis County.
So I'd normally ask you this question at the end, but I want to ask you now since you brought up your wife and I didn't know that she was in law enforcement. Do you think it helped your relationship that she was in law enforcement?
100%.
And I'm assuming that you had an open relationship with the respect that when you had an issue at work, or maybe she even had an issue at work, you guys could talk about it.
Right, and she would understand the politics of everything. Because usually police work for me, it wasn't the job. Mm-hmm. The job never bothered me. It bothers you like it bothers you. But it was never a source of angst on my part. It's the politics of the job itself that drove me insane. So you can have those talks to somebody that understands the politics of it,
right,
and they get it. Plus, when you just have those bad days where you come home and it's like, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to talk about it. And I know a lot of people that, of course, the majority, their wives weren't police officers, and they would, oh no, you need to talk about it. You need to talk about it. And they're like, no, I don't need to talk about it.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sometimes
and it's interesting because I've done these interviews, and some people go, absolutely talk to your wife about this, and other people go, no way am I talking to my wife about this. So,
yeah. Even my wife as a police officer herself, there were things that happened that I didn't talk to her until much later. Because, right, I did a lot of undercover work for a lot of years, and we'll talk about that. But, and there's things that would happen and go on where, pretty dangerous, and I still don't want her to worry. Even though a police officer, she's still going to worry because she knows, on top of that, she knows the dangers. People that are not in law enforcement assume what the dangers are. She knows what they are.
Yeah.
So I had to, and I worked in a very sensitive unit. There was investigations, we did corruption, things like that I wasn't even allowed to talk to her about because it was sensitive. So you can't even come home and talk to her about a case at times because it was was sensitive.
Yeah. Okay, so you start on patrol. You're about 30 years old, which is, I don't want to say, you're not young by any standpoint, but you got some experience.
Yes.
So St. Louis, tell me how St. Louis is, because I think of St. Louis as pretty violent. Is it?
So the city of St. Louis is violent in areas. So I think where the misperception comes in with the violence, everything, when they do these stats, in St. Louis is like #1 murder capital.
Right.
Okay, I guarantee you more people get killed in Chicago, LA, Miami, but the populations are huge. So it's per capita.
Got it.
Not that it's not a dangerous city, it is. I still don't go there a whole lot unless I really need to. But it's not, I think the perception is a lot worse than what it actually is there. Mm-hmm. Those numbers are skewed because St. Louis City is a city in of itself. So normally you have a city that's inside a county, and so those stats get spread out, right? It makes the crime lower. Well, there all they have is the city, and there's only one portion of the city that's really not dangerous. It's sketchy, but not dangerous. And the population is all moved out to the county, so the population is low. Therefore, the crime that occurs makes the numbers go up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so you got a little bit of experience working in the jail. You have your military experience. When you go on patrol, I'm assuming you have an FTO for a little while. When you finally are on patrol, are you by yourself or you're in two-man car?
City was always two-man.
Okay.
Not anymore because they're losing all their policemen. But back then we were always two-man. And then when I came out to the county, it was always one-man. Because county, in the city you needed it. There was times in the city where we'd actually have to go into the projects to do whatever the call was for, and it would actually be a four-man call. So it'd be two-man cars, because one car would have to be the overlook for the two cars that were going into the projects.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard that one yet.
Yeah, and well, we had the old style projects where you had the stairs that went up multiple levels. You couldn't take the elevator because you didn't want to be boxed in if somebody opened the door and started shooting. And then it made it complicated because then they would bust all the lights out all the way up the stairwells. So it was fun. So there it was necessary, still necessary, but they just don't have the personnel to do it, unfortunately. But St. Louis County and in the area I was in, there was a poorer side to it, and then it was mostly like middle income to upper income people, not as dangerous. You were in one-man cars.
Okay. How long are you on patrol before you become a detective?
In the county, let's see, I came out there in 96, about 4 years, right around 4 years.
Okay, so you got a little bit of experience.
Yep.
And you go into narcotics. Did you want to go into narcotics?
Yes, always, my whole career, that's all I ever wanted to do was be in narcotics.
Why?
That's what I want to do. I don't know, it just seemed fun.
Okay.
Plus, I have a history as a kid. I mean, that's the people I hung around with as a child.
Okay.
We're all, I mean, I got friends of mine that are in witness relocation program from bringing up kilos from Mexico, and those were, before I left for the military, those are the people that I hung around with.
Wow. Okay.
So, and we grew up in a, what's called the Hill, which is the Italian area. So we had a lot of mafia people in that area. So my friends were either dealing quantities of drugs, or they were people that were involved in the mafia in one way or another. So kind of grew up around that.
So,
but didn't want to be that way, thank goodness.
Yeah. But you're in narcotics, and is it fair to say you immediately get thrown into undercover?
Right. So when I went in, I wanted to be doing drug buys is what I wanted to do.
Okay.
However, and again, it was a favor because my boss liked me a lot, and he became a major, and he said, and they wanted a specific person in the drug unit. And my boss was in charge of patrol. So he said, okay, you can have him, but you got to take Kavanaugh. So I was kind of so they go, okay, what are we going to do with him? Because they wanted that guy for drugs. And they said, well, Vice can always use an extra guy. And that's how I ended up in the Vice world.
But you go to narcotics.
So it's the Vice unit's within narcotics.
Okay, got it.
So we go to narcotics unit, and we could buy drugs in a Vice unit, but it had to be related to like bar. If you went into a bar, we do bar investigations, but it had to be an owner that was selling it, not buying it from people inside the place. So the only time we would do drugs is if it was within our purview of crimes that we covered, and drugs were being sold by the targets you were going after. Otherwise, it went to the drug side of it.
How do you fall into doing the undercover?
Oh, if you didn't, you weren't in the unit. So it's you come in, and it's like, okay, time to do undercover work. You're like, yes, and let's go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was just a standard thing back in your unit.
Yep.
Everybody.
You hang out, watch a couple other guys how they did did what they did, and then you just did undercover work.
So as we get talking to your career, I mean, you're with the Vice Narcotics, you're with FBI, you're with ATF, and you're with DEA, and you're doing undercover for all these guys. So you must have developed some sort of good skill, because is it fair to say that I think you became well known as a good undercover?
Yeah, I did well with it. I spent my career. I've bought drugs. Did a year and a half long gun buys in multiple states with ATF. I was good at. To me, the best undercover, you've got to be able to talk fast, right? You got to be able to think fast. You can't go and I was always good at spinning bullshit. I mean, I've always done that. I got myself out of a lot of trouble just by spinning BS.
Where do you think that came from, though?
It came because I hung around a lot of people that were doing bad things.
Okay.
I really learned how to do bad things from guys that were doing bad things, right?
And as a result, you develop your conversation.
I knew how to talk about it. I knew how to do those things because that's how I grew up.
So I'm assuming you liked undercover.
Loved it.
Why?
Why did I love undercover? Energizing, right? It just to see if you can get away with it. And then The danger part of it, I mean, did it bother me? Yeah, because if it stops bothering you, you need to stop being an undercover. So it was always in the back of your head. But I think that's the stress of that. I actually liked that stress of it, not knowing if something was going to go sideways or not.
Did you have any close calls?
No, not. I mean, I had situations that were sketchy, but like I said, you got to be able to talk fast.
Yeah.
And I talked my way out of. I could talk my way out. I talked my way out of everything. So no times was all of a sudden I think somebody's pulling guns on me doing. I mean, I was buying guns, so there was guns around. But I think I went in with that confidence, so it all worked out for me. Closest I ever came to really having issues was we were doing an undercover operation for some prostitution sting, and I was doing a short stick, so I was on the parking lot with some other guys, and girl goes into the room. The UC made a mistake. The UC gave her the money ahead of time, and she said she was going to go to the car and get a condom or whatever it was, and he should never let her walk with the cash. It was just a rip. So we're in the parking lot. So we go to stop the car. We're just out in the parking lot. It's a big parking lot, and the guy sees us coming at him, so he runs over my partner completely up the front, out the back, comes flying towards me. So I shoot. Unfortunately, missed him, but the girl was jumping in the back seat, so the round caught her in the butt and came around and out the vagina. So, so that was the closest to the kind of things. Everything else was. I mean, was I ever stressed like, oh, this doesn't feel good all the time? And I think you have to have that, but operate through it.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to keep operating through it.
Yeah. Huh. When you're what's the drug of choice back then when you're buying drugs?
Back then it was a lot of heroin, tar heroin, white china was the big drugs that were going around at the time.
It's interesting because you're not just buying narcotics, but you're doing prostitution, you're doing drugs.
Well, that was a fun thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the Vice Unit, that's what I liked about it. Because really, I had a buddy of mine that we'd known for years. He was a city police with me and everything, and he got into drugs before I did. And he was on the drug side of things. He just did drugs. And then when I first got in there and started doing it, I'd only been in there for about a month and a half. He comes up and he goes, "Hey, you always wanted to be undercover drugs. You want to switch?" I'm like, "No way! This is too much fun," because you got to do different things.
Yeah,
we're out buying, doing underage liquor buys. Maybe not much, but it's something to do. You're hanging out in the bars. Sure. We're doing the prostitution stuff. We're doing murder for hires. We're doing just anything, gambling. We're doing it all. So every day, and it's really up to us what we want to make that. What kind of case we want to go after. We were assigned things that came in, but I go out and work my informants and try and find somebody that was maybe buying and selling stolen goods. So one day you're buying stolen goods, next day you're buying stolen guns, the next day you're buying a girl. I loved it because it was constant change.
When you were working for ATF doing their undercover and buying guns, did you find, first of all, what kind of guns were you buying?
Anything I can get my hands on. Serial numbers off books, off paper.
When you're buying guns, is the level of paranoia on you, is it higher because you're actually buying firearms?
No, it really wasn't.
Okay.
I was a little nerve-wracking. Most of the guys that I was dealing with were not like they were Hell's Angels, and these were guys that were FFLs that were selling stuff at gun shows off books.
Okay.
So it didn't. But I'm still going into hotel rooms. I'm still going into houses. And back then, I was joking about it at the training. We had half-watt Kells. You got 50 feet from the car. Your undercover team might hear you. And they might not.
Yeah.
Because they never worked very well. So that was kind of nerve-wracking. But no, all of it, I just liked doing it. It was fun.
As you've gone through patrol, detective for narcotics, Vice, you've been with FBI, ATF, DEA. Did you find a specific thing that you like to do? Were there cases that I know the answer in terms of but back then, or maybe you figured it out back then, did you find the thing that you really wanted to do?
So I've always liked and wanted to investigate. So I say I wanted to be in the drug unit. That's what I wanted to do. But second to that, and maybe actually even a little bit more, was child abuse. So my thoughts were always do drugs for a while, go over to child abuse unit, maybe get involved in the child abuse stuff. So it looked like I was saying I was enjoying what I was doing. So it just started getting popular. This was probably about 2001. With doing all the online stuff, starting to chat with guys that wanted to meet kids. Back then, it was real easy. I mean, we had, I created it. There was, our department didn't do anything like that. So I was the only one doing it. Luckily, my sergeant at the time had done child abuse for the St. Louis City Police Department. I knew him from there. He retired there after 20 years, and I think he spent about 18 of those 20 years just doing child abuse and supervising that type of unit when he came out to the county. So he had all that experience. And when I told him, hey, I want to try this, I want to try and chat with people, he was like, yeah, sure, it sounds great to him. So I got AT&T, which was Southwestern Bell back in the day, to give me a free line coming into there with no name attached to it. I got an old computer that the hard drive was hanging out the side of it, and plugged in, just started chatting with people. And people were coming out like, I could have done 10 in a day, every day, because they would just show up back then.
Back in the day in 2000, what, like, are you in chat rooms? Where are you at?
Yeah, we're in chat rooms, just AOL chat rooms, things like that. Back in the day when they had those all in there, and just ran. I didn't have any training. I didn't know what I was doing. I just got on. So I mean, I used best evidence practices. I knew I needed to record things. All that stuff that just goes with best practices. But nobody was really doing. I won't say nobody was doing. Nobody in our area was doing it. I did find one guy over in Illinois that was doing it. I went and sat with him for a day to talk to about how he did it, to get some good ideas. But I really liked that. Those guys would be showing up and they think they're going to have sex with this 12, 13-year-old. Missouri at the time didn't even have a law that really covered that. And so you would charge them with things like attempted statutory rape, statutory sodomy, things like that, because there was no enticement laws back then. In the state of Missouri, the possession of child sexual abuse material was a misdemeanor when I started doing it. And even on the Fed side, we would take those cases Fed. Back then they'd get maybe a year or two in jail. Whereas now, with everything going on and the way things are now, I mean, I was getting people 60, 65 years federal time, state time, has mandatory sentences, 10 years here, 20 years there. So it's really evolved from back then. So then my passion turned to that. That's what I wanted to do, was just internet crimes against children. That was my thing. So I wound up getting promoted out of the vice unit while I was in DEA for a little bit, and got promoted when I was detached to DEA. Stayed on the street for about a year, and then got to come back to the drug unit. They asked me to come back.
Why did you have such a drive, such an affinity for child abuse cases? Because most guys I talk to want nothing to do with it. So yeah. Why?
Well, for me, my daughter got molested as a child, so that was my driving factor right there.
Okay.
Her being abused, and it wasn't nothing that happened online or anything, but just the fact that it happened. And like I said, my kids grew up in Vermont, right? Even though after I quit drinking and did all that stuff, they didn't rush to move back to St. Louis. Her whole family was up in Vermont. That's why she went there. So I couldn't do nothing about it, right? I felt that guilt. So that's kind of what, and unfortunately it turned into, not only, once I got the taste of getting these guys, then it became an obsession to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And I had to ultimately deal with that, just as a family, because things got out of whack with my family because of my drive, and I was ignoring my family, basically.
Okay, and I want to talk with you for sure about that at the end. But why not? Why do you promote? Is somebody telling you to promote? Why promote? Why not stay as a detective?
Yes. So, and it was probably a good idea. Didn't like it at the time. The chief decided that everybody in the bureau should have basically term limits, right? So many years, you need to go back to the road. So many years, you go back to the road. And not that I'd been in the drug unit long enough to get to that spot, but I knew I would be. And I was like, man, if I go back to the road, I don't want to go back as an officer. I want to be a sergeant. So the time was right. A test came up. So I was in no way, I would have never taken, there were people that had been in the drug unit at that point for, they don't even remember the last time they were a policeman. Like my old boss, when he got promoted out of drug unit, came to the road when I was first time, I had to show him how to use the radio. Because when he left, it was push buttons, and now it's all the digital stuff. He's like, you're gonna have to show me how to use the radio. So I had to walk him through the radio.
Yeah.
But when that chief came in, he was like, nope, we're gonna start putting people back out on the road, bring new people in.
Okay, so it was kind of I want to
self-preservation.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you go back to narcotics then?
So I go back to the road for about a year,
Okay.
a little over a year and a half, and then a spot came open in narcotics. Of course, all the narcotics. Our chief was smart in that. He was smart about a lot of things, but in this case, was the supervisors generally all had prior undercover experience, and they would put people back in that had once been in there because you kind of know the rules and what's going on.
And this time you're actually in the drug unit. You're not in the vice
Right.
unit.
I'm not in the vice unit. When I first come out, I'm put into the long-term undercover narcotics. So I'm working with my detectives on those cases.
Okay. But eventually, after a year, you get to vice.
Yeah. The downside of vice generally is, so vice, you're doing a lot of different things. And they call it vice for a reason, right? Because they're all vices. So detectives, you got to keep a close eye and make sure they're staying where they need to be in their lane. But you also get supervisors that tend to get in a little trouble while they're in there as well. So that one unfortunately got in a little bit of trouble. They moved him out, and they're like, "Okay, you used to do vice. It wasn't a choice. It was you're going to vice," which was great because I wanted to go to vice anyway. So it was good. Yeah.
And ultimately, and I want to ask you why they left you in there, but from 2005 to 2021, I mean, that was the vast majority of your career was spent in vice.
Yes.
Obviously, it's your calling. You're doing God's work. But how do you maintain a job for that long when you're dealing with horrific images, you're dealing with child abuse? How do you mentally deal with that?
Right. So when I came back, it had gone back to a traditional vice unit because I was the one that did all the computer stuff. So when I got promoted and left, that nobody was doing that anymore. So when I came back to the vice unit, it became, I was like, okay, what can we get rid of work-wise so we can start doing some of this internet stuff? So we start looking around, and I'm like, okay, we're doing like underage liquor stuff, right? We shouldn't do that. There's other units that do it anyway, so let them do it. Okay, we don't need to do pawn shops, so you have to go into the pawn shops and see if stuff was stolen and compare the numbers and do all that. So I go, the burglary people couldn't do that. They're in there. So I got rid of as many pieces of vices as I could, kept all the good ones, the murder for hires and the hire for arsons and all that. And then I added in and started really going heavy on child exploitation. Sent myself to a lot of classes. It started out a lot of the distribution of and the chat stuff. So all the tools like eMule and BitTorrents and all that, the trading of the images. And we really started building out from there very big. And then, of course, ICAC heard what we were doing. They were the main ICAC was in St. Louis County, but with a small agency at the time. They said, hey, why don't you start doing more ICAC, so we got all these tips that we can send you. So then we turned into that. The vice unit, we still stayed, it's called the Special Investigations Unit, but it was Special Investigations ICAC, and we did a lot of the internet crimes against children stuff. Okay. So, and as far as your question on how do you deal with it, I've seen a lot of bad things just in my career in general. Suicides, people I've shot, just a lot of bad things. But until you see videos of babies with umbilical cords still attached being raped in video, it's a kind of whole nother level of crazy, right? How did I deal with it that many years? I don't know. I number one, I believe in counseling, period. I think everybody should go. I think policemen need to use that as a tool more often. I think supervisors of certain units ought to mandate it. So for my unit, I ultimately got it set up to where all of my detectives and myself had to go to counseling 4 times a year, 3 times by themselves, 1 time as a group to just talk to a counselor.
Okay, I think that's unusual. So where do you, I think that's very progressive, very unusual. Most of the times you got these old guys that stuff it down or whatever else. So where are you coming up with that idea? Because I think it's fantastic.
Well, because I had to deal with a lot of crap. I didn't quit drinking just by quitting drinking. I went to rehab. I went to counseling for 3 years, loved it, figured out all those reasons why I was drinking and what was going on with that, because you're not going to stop. I stopped a million times before that, right? But until I went into rehab and until I had the right counselor to go to. So I always believed in it. Whenever I had problems, my daughter got sexually abused, my first thing was go kill the guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, it's probably not good to do. I'm a policeman. That's probably not going to look good if I go kill him. I better, before I go up there and we start addressing it with the courts, and it was in Vermont, which hopefully, Vermont people don't get mad, but when it comes to kids' safety up there, it's shit. The guy got 1 year in jail, weekends only. So he can go to work every day and just stay in jail on the weekends. But anyway, so I digress on that. So I've always been good. So I went to see the counselor, like, hey, I want to go kill this guy. I know it's, so I worked through it. So I have that background of doing it and not having a problem with it. So I was, even though I was the older guy, I was fortunate that most of my people were younger, not young, but younger, and they were okay with it anyway. They were fine. You always have that guy, the one that, but he still went and did what he was supposed to do. I don't care. I don't know what he talked about. I don't care what he talked about, and that's what I tell him. I don't care. You don't have to talk about work. You can talk about problems with your wife. You can talk about how you had a good day at the shopping mall. I don't care, but you're going to go.
Yeah.
So that if something comes up, they have somebody to talk to.
Did you have any resistance from upper management?
So, yes. So I went through, because I've been around for a long time, several chiefs, right? And each chief would be like, no, 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 no. Now, a couple of things happened. So one chief came in, he's a little bit more progressive, and Ferguson happened. So we had a lot of officers during that time that were working a lot of hours, a lot of days, being abused, being spit on, peed on, thrown bricks, all that went on in those riots. And we had policemen leaving left and right. So they had already started a unit that was kind of dealing with that part of it. Had a really good unit. He had that started up, and I went to him and I said, hey, look, I want to make it mandatory that my people go and get counseling. And he's like, the first reaction was, well, why don't we just put a time limit on how long they can be there? I go, no, it's not necessary, right? I'm the supervisor. My job is to know if my guys are okay. I should be watching for those signs and seeing what's going on. He said, well, Adam, how are we gonna make somebody go? I said, well, when I was in a drug unit, you told me if I went to the drug unit, I had to take these extra urinalysis, right? Randoms you can get once or twice, whatever it was, on the road, but you had 2 mandatory ones that they could pick at any time when you're in a drug unit just to be extra safe. I said, so I'm not saying they have to go. I'm saying if they want to be in this unit, you have to go, just like the drug unit. He goes, okay, that'll work, do it. So it was good. So it turned into my unit doing it, eventually turned into the whole investigative floor, had to do the same thing.
Tell me a little bit about the Ferguson riots. How were those?
I was fortunate because I don't want to take away from any of those people that were out there on the front lines. My unit's job was intelligence gathering, finding out where people were, where the riots were going to move to next, if people were doing stuff online. And then we would do some days where we go into the crowds and then just kind of report back, hey, get on the phone and say, yeah, the crowd's moving over to this street and to that street. So for my unit, we got really no abuse. Everything was fine. Long days, long hours.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't that guy standing on the front line for 18 hours, going home for 3 hours, coming back and working 15 more hours every day. So it was really hard. It was really hard on our African American officers because it seemed like they got the brunt of a lot of what was going on, blaming them for everything that was going on as well.
Yeah, it's just so weird to me. I don't understand that at all. But I'm not in that situation. But tell me this: if you're gathering intelligence in the crowd, and there were a lot of riots that happened around that same time around the country. Did you get any sense of somebody organizing these things? Who is primarily the agitators?
You had 2 factions: the daytime faction and the nighttime faction. 2 different things. The daytime faction wasn't as bad. There was always your agitators that got in there and started stuff. They were coming from all over the country to come in there. It wasn't citizens of Ferguson. There were some citizens of Ferguson's. Those were generally the ones that weren't that much of a problem. It's the ones that were coming in from out of town and everywhere else that were doing a lot of that.
The ones that were coming in, do you think they were getting paid to come in, or they just were taking advantage of the chaos?
I have no idea. I guess that's more of a geopolitical type question.
Okay.
I just think it's odd that how are they affording, some of these people didn't look like they could afford to do much, or all making it into St. Louis to do it.
What was your impression? Were they there just to burn shit down, or were they there to loot and...
Yes, all the above.
All of the above.
Yeah. So like I said, in the evening tended to be more violent. as the evening went on, once the dark of night came around, and that's when a lot of, there was stuff happening all day long, but a lot of the really violent stuff was starting to happen in the evenings.
Okay. All right. Getting back to the Vice Unit.
Yes.
I've just attended a class with you. Obviously, we're doing a lot of, I'm going to call it OSINT, but for the audience, it's online kind of exploitation, just looking up stuff online. I want to make it as simple as I can, explaining it stuff.
Yep.
But undercover stuff, online. How big are the cases that you were dealing with? I talked to a guy, Huntington Beach. He was in ICAC, and he said, we were sending out leads all over the world, and there were thousands of leads.
Right.
How much were you dealing with?
So, yeah. And every ICAC deals with this. There is just the cyber tips that come in from the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children. Just those tips will overwhelm any police department, period. And then we had all the stuff coming in from the road guys, from the other detectives, from parents calling into the unit, from the FBI. Everything's coming in. The amount of work that our ICACs have to put up with across the United States is scandalous. And not only that, a good friend of mine, Jim Cole, he's a retired HSI guy that works with this organization called Operation Lightshine out of Nashville. They put out a thing the other day. Is they went into Congress, right? They're saying we need more money. These ICACs need money. They need funding. They need equipment, and they were funded at, I think it was $105 million. Just to kind of put it into perspective, he said, $105 million. Drugs, so that's for our kids, right? The safety of our kids. They're spending a whole $105 million. Sounds like a lot of money till you look at the drug budget, which is $40 billion. $40 billion. And those kids that are getting sexually abused, those kids that are in those videos, there's going to be a vast majority of them that are going to be part of the drug problem at the other end. But they're only willing to spend. So they went to Congress, hey, we need more money, we need to do this. And then when the budget came out for 2024, they cut it by $2 million. So it went from 105 to 103. We've got to, as a nation, globally, because it's everywhere, we've got to do better for our ICAC people. They're working their selves to the bone to death.
Okay, you just mentioned something. That was going to be my next question for you. Is this just an American problem, or is it a worldwide problem?
It's a worldwide program, but don't be mistaken. The vast majority is coming from right out of here, out of the United States. And that's the problem, is some people think, well, that's an overseas problem. And no, it's right here. I had 8 detectives in my unit, and it was multi-jurisdictional, so I had them from different counties around. So we had 8 detectives. You could have doubled and tripled that. You could have run that shift. You could run, we did our 8-hour day, well, scheduled 8-hour days. They were always doing longer. You could run 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, just in St. Louis County, and not keep up with the volume of work that's coming in. When I left, I came in there, and we had a drawer. I called it my search warrant drawer, from things coming in. All the stuff we were doing, all the online investigations we're doing, the undercover stuff we're doing that we needed to do search warrants on. And then that drawer would be 50 or 60 pending. And we would do 2 or 3 a week, every week, for 15 years. And when I left, that drawer was still the same amount, because it's not ending. One of the things I used to joke around with the drug guys, one of my biggest things was, I used to always tell them, I said, we started doing all the kid stuff. I was like, yeah, you guys are making a big difference with that drug bust, and there's 3 houses next door that are selling it too. And I go, at least when we go in, we've now protected kids in that neighborhood. And then I started driving past the house that we did the search warrant at, past the other house we did the search warrant at, to get to the house that we need to do the search warrant at. Yeah. We'd have 2 on the same street, not connected to each other, completely separate. But the tips would come in, they just both happened to be doing it, and we had to do simultaneous search warrants so that the one guy wouldn't get rid of the stuff. That's how bad it is. It's bad.
Okay, so I guess I didn't phrase my question well. So this is a worldwide problem.
Yep.
You think of, Americans going over to the Philippines, and there's a problem over the Philippines. Who's driving the problem? Do you think it's Americans that are driving this problem, or no, this is every country has freaks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't think America's not driving, like we can talk about the drug problem, right? Is America driving that problem because of the need? Mm-hmm. I just think, we're a very populous country. We have a lot of wealth. We can afford a lot of things. Like some of these third world countries, how are they going to do it unless Americans and Europeans go into these areas and pay for kids and those types of things? So there is that aspect to it. But no, it's literally everywhere. Everywhere.
Have you found any commonality between these people that abuse kids? Or is it just, I mean, like, for example, are a vast majority of them abused as kids? I mean, is there any sort of pattern that you found?
No, not with that pattern. I would say if I looked at a pattern, depending on the person, right? So you got people that where I can see a pattern. It used to be like in the old days when we did it before the internet was really big. And they were ordering stuff through the mail and have magazines sent and all that. You would see a progression. And if I could say anything, that's kind of the most common thing, is to see a progression. Now we've gotten plenty of guys that just had tens of thousands of images and videos of children being raped, and that would happen quite often. But we would also see a lot of that pattern. So it might be a lot of regular, just your average pornography, and then all of a sudden you'll see like a lot of lesbian and that type of, and then get into the fetish stuff, and then get into the barely legal stuff, and it's almost like, and even by the description of some of the guys that we've interviewed over the years, is they needed to find that next thing, right? It wasn't doing it for them anymore, so they went to the next thing, and they never intended, according to them, on looking at child stuff. It just, I already went through everything else, so I ended up there. Yeah.
Okay. 2 questions for you.
Yes.
I don't want to freak the audience out. So tell me, I don't want to know the worst, right? Tell me the weirdest. Is there one that sticks out to your mind as like, oh my gosh, I can't, that one's freaky. I don't understand that one.
So you can decide if you want to edit it later. I'll tell the story.
Okay. Okay.
So in that job, you think you've heard it all, and then you hear it again. So one of my guys is interviewing the suspect, and we'd been to his house, and he had a bunch of child sexual abuse material. They're in the interview room talking to him, and my detective's talking to him, and he's saying, hey, and he's being cooperative, and the bad guy goes, look, I'm not into kids, but you're going to find a bunch of child pornography on my computer. So my detective leans back and goes, okay, explain. He goes, well, if you notice, all of my images and videos that I have of kids all involve diapers, right? So the kids will be in diapers, and those type of things, and then there's sex going on. He goes, but that's not what, he goes, what I like is, I like to sit there and watch it, and I put on a diaper, and I imagine myself being a child and having them come on my face. That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Oh my gosh, there's just some freaking sick people out there.
Yeah. So I'd say for as far as weird, that's like the weirdest thing I've seen.
Okay, how about this? How about this? What's the breakdown of male abusers versus female abusers?
Interesting, you should say that. So I'm on a mission lately online, is because what we tend to think of, and then I've had some, I get people upset because I tend to say things just the way I want to say them, and it would seem like, so if you have a, let's say a 13-year-old girl, and she's being sexually abused by the 25-year-old male teacher. People lose their minds. He needs to go to jail forever, which is right? That's what he needs to do. Right. He needs to go to jail. Now, make that a 13-year-old boy, and the really good-looking, because it does make a difference, 25-year-old teacher, oh, he's lucky. He's lucky he was sexually abused? Right? So I'm starting to see a turn finally. It used to be you never saw it. Now more and more is getting out there. I'm seeing more and more female teachers, nurses, parents getting arrested and getting charged. And the only thing is they're finally getting better sentences. But in the same scenario where the victim is a girl, that guy might get 25, 35 years. And then that female teacher now might get probation or a couple of years in jail. So there's still that disparity, but it's because is the boy really a victim? Well, yeah, he's a victim, just like the 13-year-old. So my example I would give to my people that would go, oh, he's lucky, you know, blah, some, you know, policeman walking by being an idiot. I go, oh, really? I go, so if your 13-year-old son is gay and the nice-looking 25-year-old male teacher has sex with him, you're okay with that too then, right? Because, I mean, and then they're like, oh, get out of here. You're always saying stupid shit and, you know, walking off. I'm like, what's the difference? There is no difference.
What's the breakdown, though? Do you still think it's 90-10 to male versus female abusers, or is it I'm assuming it's not 50-50.
No, and here's the problem, though. Is it or is it not? Males are not comfortable with coming out and saying they were sexually abused. In both cases. So they don't want to say that they were sexually abused by the woman because they don't want to seem like less of a man, right? And if the suspect is male and this boy is not gay, everybody will think I'm gay. I'm never going to tell anybody. So the true number, we don't know. What is it? Reported, I would go, yes, more reports go of male offenders than female that I've seen. But that doesn't make it right because our male victims are not reported. But they are more and more. You're seeing more and more of these young boys, plus the added help, technology. So even if the boy isn't reported, mom's finding it out, dad's finding it on their phone that he's got this, you know, teacher that's having sex with him. They're finding those chat messages and those text messages, and then the parents are reporting it when the kid's not.
Can you talk a little bit? We discussed this before we started recording, but basically an issue.
I knocked it over.
That's all right. That's right. An issue with, in this day and age, of just, I guess, younger teenagers filming naked, you know, taking naked pictures, and that's not necessarily something that, you know, your detectives have to deal with far more important things, but they still need to deal with that. How are you guys handling that now? Right.
So we're fortunate in St. Louis. We're kind of doing I'd call it a project, but we've been doing it for 3 years. We want to get the numbers good and see what they come out before we publish it out. But what we're doing is we're working with ICAC in Missouri. Any case that comes in from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children where a child has videotaped themselves and uploaded it to something. So let's say they upload it to YouTube. A lot of times it goes to YouTube. I don't know why, but it goes up to YouTube, or that's the reports we get anyway. So they'll come in, we'll look at those, and this nonprofit I work for is called Crisis Aid International. They send those tips to me because I still have clearance and activation to the ICAC data system and stuff like that. I'll look at them, kind of make my determination from doing them for so long, like making sure it's not a bad guy. Like if one got sent to me and yeah, it's a self-produced image, but it's going to a Dropbox, it's probably a bad guy because kids aren't uploading stuff to Dropbox. So I'll review it. I have people that work for me. Then what they do is they'll call the parent, say, hey, all of our crisis aid offices are located within police departments. Say, hey, we work with the police department. We need you to come in. This is what your child has done online. We want to talk about it. So we have advocates at each one of those locations. My person, which is prior law enforcement also, will talk to the kiddo a little bit, kind of see if there's anything more going on, or did one of his buddies, you know, tempt him to do it or tell him to do it, or did it by accident, whatever that excuse is. But our advocates also meet with that kiddo, and they can come back, you know, again and again, and they teach them internet safety, you know, self-respect, relationship, all that type of stuff, to try and change the behavior, because if we don't, we know they're ultimately going to meet somebody online and get sexually abused. It's just a pattern. And then in our trafficking world, we know that our victims of trafficking were sexually abused as children at 90% of the time. A trafficking victim will have been abused as a child. So we're trying to avoid that to be in their future as well. And then getting the parents educated on internet safety, what they can do to watch over their kids. You know, and to me, for parents, there's only one way. The best way to protect your kid online. Talk to your kids. And don't wait till they're 12 and 13. So that program where all those tips come in, the average age of that child that comes in that's already taken a video, taken a picture, and uploaded it, that program that I created, the average age it comes in is 5 or 6 years old.
Really?
5 or 6 years old. So if parents are waiting to 11 or 12 to talk to them about that device, you're 5 or 6 years too late. By that time, they've already talked to strangers online at that point. So, yeah.
Wait a minute. 5 or 6 years old,
Yes.
They're uploading those pictures?
Yes.
Man, these kids shouldn't even have phones.
Right. So that's another problem. So that's another tangent I can go on, but here's what we do to our kids. If you want to teach your son how to build something, and you got power saws, do you hand them the power saw and go, hey, go cut some wood? No. Hey, here's how you hold it. You put it in a vise. You cut like this. So you teach them how to protect themselves. You're going to teach your son or your daughter how to cook. You go, hey, the stove gets hot here. You don't touch this side or that side. Put the pot on. Hey, use pot holders. Don't touch the handle. We tell them it's dangerous. So kids know this is dangerous. The toy they play with, this they play is not, right? We don't talk to them about be careful, don't with your doll, right? Because we don't have to. Then we hand them the phone. And we don't tell them anything.
Right.
And they assume it's safe.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
I'll tell people this. People are always worried about their kid walking to and from someplace because they're going to get snatched. Your kid's being snatched every day. He's in his room with his phone. You're bringing that bad guy into your home every time. We've had those cases where this girl had met a guy online and he liked to watch her sleep. So she would prop her phone up at night, and that's how mom happened to walk in and saw the camera on, and the guy's just watching her sleep. So don't be so worried about them walking around the neighborhood. You need to be more worried about the fact that you keep handing them phones and not talking to them. The number one way you can stop it is not any software, because kids are going to get around all that software. The bad guys are going to tell them how to do it. They're going to get on YouTube. It's going to tell them how to do it. They're going to borrow their friends. Even if I know friends of mine that say, my kids are never going to have phones until they're X age, 18, 19, 20, whatever it is. I go, that's fine. You still need to talk to them. Well, why? They're never going to get a device. I go, because they're going to go to the friend's house where their mom and their dad doesn't care, and they're going to have an old phone laying around and they're going to start using it. Jump on a Wi-Fi. So conversations with our kids. If you want to protect your kids, if you want to save your child, start it at a young age. Stop calling it their cookie and all these other words for their body parts. My 5-year-old granddaughter, she calls her vagina a vagina. The 3-year-old calls her vagina a vagina. Because there has been cases where kids go into school and say, oh, my uncle's mean, he touched my cookie. And their teacher's like, oh, well, he shouldn't be doing that. Well, their cookie meant vagina.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's my soapbox on that.
No, that's fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. Okay, getting back to your unit, your supervisory of your people. Was there a time limit? How long did your people normally last in that unit dealing with this over and over and over again?
Most of my people are still there. I left 4 years ago. There's some new people there. Like some of them want to get promoted, so they'll be in there for a while, especially in the smaller municipalities. Mm-hmm. So we have, like I said, it's multi-jurisdictional, so the municipalities will do people. For them, they've got to go back out to the road before they can even put in for the test. So I had one guy that was with me for, 12, 13 years, something like that. And then he was like, man, I want to be a supervisor. So he left and went to it. Not because he was burnt out, not because he was tired of it. He just wants to be a supervisor at some point. I've had only one person that left that I had to ensure that left was because it was one of my detectives. She had a baby. She was off on pregnancy leave. She came back, and I noticed she was having some problems. We started talking about it, and she was like, hey, I can't even change my baby's diapers without thinking of all this stuff I'm seeing, right? So me, that's a clue. So I had to go to the boss and say, okay, it's time to move her to a different spot. She's aware of it. She can't deal with it anymore and move on. Most of them stay.
Do you think that's because they have you as a supervisor that's kind of aware and can kind of pick that out, but then also you're mandating, hey, you're going to go to this training so many times a year?
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I always tell people. The mistake I think that's being made a lot with people that are doing online work, whether that's ICAC stuff, even in the drug world, all those. If your people are going to have undercover accounts, we need to hold them to the same accountability we do our drug detectives when we keep an eye on what's going on with them, making sure everything's safe with them. People that are doing homicide stuff, watching for that burnout, things like that. I think sometimes these online accounts, supervisors tend to go, oh, okay, they're doing that online stuff and not messing with it. Right. And you have to, as a supervisor, it's for the betterment of your people.
Do you, as a supervisor, you go around and talk a lot, right?
Yes, sir.
So do you Do you ever address that at conferences do you go to, or do you ever go to, I don't know what they have. Do they have ICAC conferences where you guys are specifically dealing with and talking about how to ensure your mental well-being?
Right. So ICAC themselves, so the task force, the ICAC task force, which are 50 something of them in the United States, they have a program and they do train on all that. They're very good. I'll give ICAC that. The system itself in place is pretty good at making sure that their people have the resources they need to get it done. Now, it also falls back on individual agencies. ICAC has it as a whole, but are those agencies able to get it? You can't, to me, that direct line supervisor, that's your job. Those are your people, regardless, you have to keep an eye on them. You have to make sure that they're doing okay.
Yeah. You said something earlier at dinner that I thought was very interesting. I always assume you guys are watching, and that kind of is the thing that is triggering. But it wasn't for you.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I had, my issue was seeing the images, seeing the videos is bad. Mentally, I can decompartmentalize it. I did fine. I did it for 21 or 20 out of 21 years anyway. So I was good at decompartmentalizing it. But we had a case that had come through, and when we were done with the part of the case I was involved in, I didn't sleep for like 2 or 3 days. I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't figure out why. And of course, I'm a counseling kind of person, so I go talk to my counselor and like, hey, I don't, something's off. Why all of a sudden? I've been doing this at that point, I've probably been doing it for 17, 18 years. Why now? Well, what I learned for me was I didn't like hearing it. I also don't like to hear victims tell. So now I'm kind of glad I never went to child abuse, because hearing the story or hearing the abuse on the videos themselves does something to me. I got over it. I dealt with it, and I just know now when I listen to anything, I make sure the volume's turned off. That case was a case where that couldn't be done because we were listening for voices within the tape to see if more people were involved in the abuse of the girl that was in the video. So we would have had to have done it, but that might have been something where I needed to step out of. And somebody else that's comfortable with hearing it. We had a guy, actually he was a retired policeman, a California policeman. He had offended against a kid in California, packed up and moved to the Philippines. And while he was over there, he was molesting a bunch of kids and sending the videos to people over here in the United States. So I got involved in that case with the FBI. I did all the undercover stuff with the guy in the Philippines. So they went over, they got him. So ultimately he gets arrested, he's back here, he's indicted in the United States. And the prosecutor didn't know that. I don't like to hear these things. And I didn't know what, he was, hey, you need to come in for a meeting. I'm like, okay. Next thing I know, I'm in this room. It's a very small room, very, very small room. And it's me, the bad guy is sitting right next to me, because it's a prof, but it's not a proffer, but it's he's going to admit to his stuff so he can get a lesser sentence. So he's sitting there. His attorneys, he's got 2 of them are sitting there, and 2 prosecutors and an investigator, and we're in a tiny room. And they start playing the interview of the girls in the Philippines talking about what he has done to them. And the whole time he's like shaking his head and smirking like they were lying. I knew he wasn't because I did all the undercover work. And it was like, the door was right here. I'm like, I got to get out this door. So I just can't hear it because I almost got in trouble that day. So we had to be good with that one.
Yeah. How do you not just, I mean, I'm sure you do, but I can't imagine sitting next to these guys and not want to reach over and just choke them out.
Yeah, you do. But there's a lot of bad things, right? All that is tough. But the upside of it is also the people we deal with all go to prison most of the time for a significant amount of time. I'm not saying that those cases, because I've had them where the judge gave them 1 day in jail. We've had that happen before. That's because they were going to kick him out of the country. I go, oh, great, because he was here on a visa. Give him 1 day and send him back to a country that he's going to abuse people. Yeah. And, but so you have those, but for the majority, they get a lot. So once you get them to say that, or once you find that image you're going to be able to time, you're like, yes, they're going to prison.
Got it.
And they're going to go for, not till they die, but if they're in there for 5, 10, 15 years, that's 5, 10, 15 years he's not molesting kids.
Yeah.
And that's the upside of the job that kind of keeps, I think that's what keeps my people and me motivated to keep doing it, not only to protect the kids, but knowing that we're going to get that guy. And the minute you get that, because you can see the whole, when my guys are all focused on investigation, when I was focused on investigation, you could tell the moment they knew they had the bad guy, because their whole demeanor was like, yes, here we go. And then everything was down, was fine for there. It was done and over with. So
Before I ask you the two last questions I always ask, you retired in 2021, but you didn't really retire. What are you doing? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so one of the things I do is I go across country, do different trainings, different conferences, get information out there. Latest things. I keep up with everything. I go to the ICACs, make sure that I got all the recent information, because things change quickly. And I like to get that information out, because the problem is yes, there's all these ICACs, but there's a lot of agencies that don't even know what ICAC is, or have one around them that they're affiliated with. So we got a lot of officers. A small minority of police officers are part of ICAC. So I want to make sure everybody knows how to get that bad guy. So I do that. And then I work for, like I said, I work for a nonprofit, Crisis Aid International. It's in St. Louis. We have 7 offices in St. Louis. 6 of them are in police departments in various counties around us. And then we have an office in the U.S. Attorney's Office, which we're proud of, because it's not easy to get, It's not easy for a nonprofit to get office space in the U.S. Attorney's Office. So we set up, it's a big room, probably about as big as this bedroom here. And we got a corner for kids. We've got couches. We got all kinds of stuff. So now when people go to those trials, instead of sitting at that wood hard table where the bad guy keeps walking out in front of all the time, we take them up to that room. The kids can play with the toys. The parents can relax before they go into court. So we're really proud of that one. We got 3 offices in 3 different counties and police departments in Michigan. We got a 21-bedroom house up in Michigan for trafficking victims. So if anybody has a trafficking victim that needs to get out of wherever they're at and have some place to go that's an adult, right now we're going to have kids, because we got 2 separate wings. Right now it's just kids. They'd always get a hold of you to get a hold of me or whatever.
Okay.
And we can get them up to our safe home, and they have therapy and all that stuff, that the wraparound services.
Your nonprofit, does it have a website? I'll just link it in the description. What is it?
Yeah, it's ussafe.org.
Okay.
And that'll have all the parent stuff. We're updating. It's a little rough right now. We're trying to get it all updated, but it's a good website with some information, contact, how to report, training, if you want to request training, law enforcement training. So they can go there, ussafe.org.
Okay.
And then we got Colorado Springs as well.
Oh.
So.
Okay. 2 last questions.
Yes.
How did law enforcement affect your family?
Let's see. For me, it was a little bit easier, like I said, with my wife being in law enforcement. But as far as the kid stuff, the effect was, when we do those, like when I did the drug stuff, we were in areas of St. Louis that there's no way I would drive my child to and drop them off at their house. Just, it wouldn't happen. It's a drug area. You're not going to do it. What became a problem was, I was going to policemen's houses, executing search warrants, arresting policemen, firemen, mayors of cities, lawyers, the poorest of the poor. We were multi-million-dollar homes, So then in my head, it was like, I can't let my kids go anywhere. Like, I can't let them go to any of their friends, because any of their friends is a potential pedophile, right? So it caused some problems, again, like counseling, so I had to go get that figured out, because I wouldn't let my family go anywhere. I wouldn't let my kids go spend a night. I wouldn't let them go to their friends to even play. Everybody had to come to our house. My wife had to be there with me at the same time. It would never be, especially if it was one of my daughter's girlfriends, I would never be in the house alone with them. I had to have my wife. So it took me a few years to, I still don't trust it, but I had to do it. I couldn't enjoy my daughter was a cheerleader. I couldn't enjoy it because I'd be there the whole time going, why is that guy recording? Who's that guy with? Why is he over there? And I couldn't even tell you what it's about. So an aside funny story I told yesterday was, so I retire. We're going to take the whole family, all the grandkids. We're all going to Destin. We're going to rent a house out on the beach and just kind of chill for a week or so. And before we left, me and my daughter, my wife, and I went out to dinner. And my daughter's probably 26 at the time. And we're eating dinner. She goes, hey, Dad. She goes, I just thought of something. I go, what's that? She goes, this will be the first vacation I've ever gone on with you where you weren't on your phone the whole time. And I was like, oh, it was right. Yeah. I'd be on the beach on my phone all day long, work stuff. I don't think I took a day off. I worked 7 days a week for 18 years. 19 years.
I mean, it's that type of work has got to drive you, though.
It's hard to stop, and that's why I'm still doing some stuff. But at least I don't have to look. Well, I take that back. I do have to look at points because I do the kids that are self-producing. But it's not generally 99.9% of the time. There's nothing sexual going on them. They're just like nude, or maybe they're spreading their butt apart or something like that. So it's not a rape going on that I'm watching, or the baby still has an umbilical cord attached and somebody's having sex with it. You know, those types of things. It's not that intense anymore.
Yeah.
So
okay. Last question, and maybe this kind of goes along with what you just said, but I'm very interested in this. How did law enforcement, if you can think about when you started till now, how did law enforcement affect the way that you see people?
Yeah, I don't trust anybody. First thing I did when I retired, I lived in a small community. It wasn't a big city. I lived in a small community. I mean, you had the one grocery store and a couple of things, but it was still too crowded for me. So we moved all the way out to the country. I got 8 acres, a cornfield across, on one side of my street, a creek on the other one. Nobody can build around me at all. I don't see people. So I don't like, I won't say I don't like people. I mean, I love doing this. I love going out and doing these talks. But when I'm away, I want to be away from everything anymore. It's changed me in that way, because I was born and raised in the city. I ran around the city my whole life. Now I'm like, no, not so much.
Yeah. Adam, thank you so much for this
No problem.
interview. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.